Well, good afternoon, and thank you all for joining us. We have more people filtering in, so we'll kick things off in just a few minutes here. So while we're waiting for people to continue filtering in, I'll do some housekeeping items. We have a great lineup today. We have some of our paid specialists here to teach us all the ins and outs of effective online advertising, but I want to make this an interactive session. So there is a question and answer panel. There's a chat panel at the bottom of Zoom. Please feel free to use that. We're going to leave some time at the end, hopefully. We have a lot of material to cover, but we want to answer your questions. So as questions pop up, as we're discussing and sharing tips, strategies, best practices, anything you want a deeper dive on, use that question and answer panel. Ask questions throughout, and we'll try to cover all of them. If for some reason we don't get to any of you, we don't get to your question live, we will follow up after the fact and make sure that that's answered. So with that said, I'm going to kick things off, and I am your MC for today. I'm Brad Smith. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer here at Haley Marketing Group, and I've been working with staffing companies for the last 20 years. And what's so exciting about today is that we're going to talk about a marketing tool and tactic that is widely used in other industries, and I think underused in the staffing industry. And I think that provides a great opportunity for all of us that are struggling right now with filling open assignments. I know that unemployment rates are still historically low, and we're having challenge filling our open job orders, but we're also going to key in on how paid advertising can help you drive more inbound sales leads. We've heard recessions, we've seen bank collapses, there's economic concerns and economic worries. And for the last several years as an industry, we haven't had to work too hard to sell. And I think that's really going to change. And I think that the staffing companies and recruiting organizations that are aggressive with tactics like paid, that are aggressive in getting their message out there and their value proposition out there, are the ones that are going to secure more market share and continue to get new job orders as they begin to dry up a little bit. So joining me today is our paid media team director, Stephanie Rindeck. Stephanie, thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, Brad, of course. Glad to be here.
And Erin Helms is one of our leading paid specialists here. She is consulting and working with our clients on uncovering what their goals are, how we need to reach their audience, and more specifically, who their audience is, and then making sure we design great creative, great copy, great conversions that drive results. Erin, thank you so much for joining us too.
Thanks for having me, Brad.
All right, so let's dig in. I want to start things off very basic. Steph, Erin, I'm going to throw this question out to you for the audience. What is PPC?
Yeah, so PPC stands for pay-per-click. So, PPC, pay-per-click, paid media, whatever you hear as, paid advertising, it's essentially just that advertising model where you're going to pay each time someone engages with your ad. In this case, it's that click. So that fee covers having the cost of your ad appear on an advertising channel. And what's great about paid advertising is the fact that it helps you target a very specific audience, deliver them a message, and find them at key times, of their buying process. And as Erin will describe, those messages can appear in a variety of ways.
Yeah, there are a lot of different ad formats. We're all very familiar with search-based ads. So these can appear on Google and Bing, as well as partner sites like DuckDuckGo or Yahoo. If you've been on YouTube, you're very familiar with video ads. We have graphic display ads, which are those digital billboard type of ads. And those are great because they're responsive, which means they fit to the availability of the site that's showing it. So whatever inventory the site has, and that could be a leaderboard, a square, a small square. Basically, you have infinite combinations available to you with display. Facebook, we know, uses images and text, but it can also utilize video and show off a carousel of images that a user can click or thumbnail through. And then finally, LinkedIn has rich graphics and text, And one of my favorite new features is a document ad where you can use a PDF or a document preview.
One thing that I wanted to really point out and highlight that was said here is that PPC online advertising is a great way to get your message, your brand visibility at key times throughout that buying process. It is a process. What we're finding and what we're hearing in the staffing market is that not only do you have to sell to the direct hiring manager, but now you have to sell to the hiring manager, maybe to the HR manager, maybe to the CFO, maybe to the COO, maybe to the CEO. It's no longer a one-person decision. In fact, staffing decisions are now, in general, made by 4 or 5 people talking. So the buying decision, the buying process, that cycle has expanded, and we need to make sure that we're in the forefront of people's minds throughout that entire cycle so that you have a higher likelihood of either earning that job rec or earning that candidate's application. And the other thing here is that think about the amount of money spent by a staffing and recruiting agency on job board advertising. It's a huge expense. It's a huge line item. PPC can be used as a way to increase the successful recruitment advertising and get in front of and stay in front of people as they're making their job decision. So really, really impactful stuff here. Now, I might have skipped ahead, Aaron and Steph, so I apologize, but why else does PPC matter?
Yeah, you hit on a lot of the key bullet points there, but you also just highlighted the fact that there's a lot of uncertainty in the market. And I will say the fact is there's still demand there for your services, but the most fundamental lesson is to keep yourself visible, like you said. Paid ads help you do that. Visibility not only builds that trust, that's really essential for successful relationships, but again, in this current economy, it keeps your business alive. If you go dark, people can't find your brand. They might think you're out of business. But really, as you were saying, it's building awareness, staying top of mind, nurturing relationships. And those actually 3 key points there are going to be visualized in the next slide. But those are all inherent results of PPC as a touch point with your audiences. Whether you're introducing new candidates or clients to your offerings or continually connecting them, it's all about the decision-making process. And as you're seeing on the slide here, it's our favorite model at Haley. It's the ADA model. And it's about paying to play and, accelerating the placement of your brand, your job posting, your sales pitch to your target audiences. It's not love at first click. So PPC, as with any marketing that you do, is a process. It's going to take time to build that awareness, to make them initially aware that you are there and you have what you need. And it's going to funnel down into generating that, again, relationship building process to spark interest that they want to learn more about you or create the desire to keep you top of mind. Overall, it again takes multiple touch points. And in the famous words that Aaron always likes to use, it's really, you're going to wine and dine your audiences. And it's a really great analogy that it's going to take some time, but it's the process everybody goes through.
Stephanie, I love that comment that it's not love at first click, because it's true, right? Historically, when you think about marketing, years ago, it was the stat was around like 6 to 8 touch points before somebody makes a decision. And as I mentioned earlier, we now have more decision makers in that process. And the latest results say 18 to 20 or more touches before somebody makes that decision. So this model is extremely important. We need to drive awareness. We need to drive interest and desire. And before somebody takes action, we might have to hit them 20 times with different medium, and paid advertising can help accelerate that cycle.
Exactly, Brad. It is a digital relationship, and just like real life, it takes time. So PPC can put your ads at the top. With changes in how Google serves up results, it's now infinite scroll. So your ads can be seen more often, where previously, how many users went to page 2 or page 3. Google is the most visited website in the world. The average user goes to Google 3 to 4 times a day. And US adults also use Facebook 7 to 10 times a day. So you want to make sure you can capture your audience when they are actively looking for your service in the search engines. On social, we're not using keywords, but we're identifying those prospects by using audience signals and customer lists or ATS lists, or we're re-engaging with your followers. So you want to make sure you cater your message to that user depending on how you're reaching them. PPC also, it enhances your other efforts. So whether you're doing email, social, your cold calling, job fairs, all of it, everything you're doing, the more the user sees your brand and your message from all of your efforts, the more real estate you're going to take up in that user's brain. More touch points means an increased perceived market dominance. And finally, my last point for this slide is something called attribution. I love attribution. Anyone that's been on calls with me, I love talking about it. PPC is a great first click interaction. And through attribution reports, we can visually see the common path that user takes before they convert. So many times PPC is that very first touch. They click on your paid ad. Then they come back organically because they're going to go back to Google and they're going to search view. After some consideration, we then see a direct interaction because they bookmarked you or they manually typed your address into the search bar. So it's not uncommon to see 4 or 5 or sometimes even more touch points before that conversion happens.
And Aaron, that really showcases that third bullet there, enhancing other marketing campaigns. PPC is an amazing way to make sure that your sales efforts, your recruiting spend, everything else is optimized so that you're driving the most results. It can soften up a cold lead. It can get a warm lead to hot lead status. It can help reinforce, like you just mentioned, that you're a big player in the market, even if maybe you don't have the same resources of a large national. It's a leveler. I love it.
It is, because it's not love at first click. Sometimes you see that conversion happen right away on the first click, but more often than not, it does take those multiple touch points, and PPC always has a hand in that process.
Great. Steph, talk to us a little bit about the term pay to play.
Yeah, so it's a really, it's the fact that your ads are going to go as far as your ad budget. Meaning you're only going to get maybe X amount of clicks for, the amount of budget you're spending within a given time. But to spend it wisely, there's several tactics to consider, and there's a lot that comes to PPC in terms of what makes it successful. But we've pared it down to these 5 essential strategies here. The first 3 are key foundational items. And honestly, they're not just, focused on PPC's efforts, but again, any of your digital efforts, but they're going to make your PPC ad stronger. You want to build a strong foundation for your website, utilize certain tactics like landing pages, and make sure your post-click data tracking is established. And especially with the introduction of GA4 coming out, we want to make sure that's ready for you guys. The last 2 are very specific to PPC and the fact it's going to help you build a strong initial strategy. So what are you actually going to launch your ads with based on who you're targeting and where you're advertising to them?
Awesome. Let's dig into these a little bit then. Talk to us about PPC and your website.
Yeah, so again, these are all essential to advertising as a whole, but PPC ads will lead people to your website, but are they going to know what to do when they get there? So ask yourself, is your site designed to convert? There's a number of different items here that, will indicate, what's on your website will kind of translate into that conversion. Are you directing people with the right calls to action or CTAs? Do you repeat them multiple times? Do you have evidence that your job offerings or your services are effective? And how can people easily learn about you? Those built-in conversion trackers, we want to make sure we can actually monitor what's happening after, people engage with your site. Once they complete the contact us form, can we understand that? Are they engaging with your phone number? And so understanding those application submissions to job board signups, that's all key information to help us understand that paid ads, for example, are really working and how we can optimize those ads to perform even better.
Now, Steph, as you're setting up campaigns and managing campaigns, these are the metrics that you're looking at. Are you reporting these back to staffing companies that you're working with?
Correct. Yeah. So, and it's going to vary website to website because, again, based on how your website might be built, if it's older, it might not have some of these triggers, but your website is unique to you. And, we'll work with you to understand how we can monitor the most successful actions. So again, it's a matter of investing in your website and making sure you have that correct conversion path to, obviously encourage people to take those actions, but also to monitor it to help your marketing efforts.
And those conversion trackers, as Steph just mentioned, are really important to make sure that you're spending money in the right places. You can go by gut instinct. You can say, yeah, I think this is working, but we want to make sure that you have the right conversion trackers in place to make educated decisions on your spend. And when at all possible, we're looking at things like Steph mentioned, those thank you pages. One of my favorite is the click to phone number, where in a report, we can actually show you if somebody clicked on your phone number, and in some cases, even show you the mobile phone device that did it. It's amazing the level of insight that you can get, that you can use in other marketing and sales efforts too. Let's talk a little bit about custom landing pages, because as the slide shows, they are really an ad's best friend.
Honestly, yeah, I can't wait to get to the little case study on there. But, these really are an extension of your ad and a value add to your website as a whole. These will function with the same, builds and structures and best practices as your normal web pages, but they're going to complement what your ad message is and who it's targeting and the message you want to convey. So 3 key takeaways here is to have, one purpose for that single page, have it speak to somebody very specific, deliver that message and educate them why, you can help them. Again, with that quick, straightforward messaging, consider the ad an extension, landing page as consider the landing page as an extension of your ad. Within your ad, if you think about it, you have a quick snippet of text, graphics, just a really quick insight to have them click on that ad. But when they get to your landing page, you want to expand on what they just read, so explain, in a very quick manner, because we only have a few seconds to maintain that attention and encourage them to do something. And that's where that conversion rate optimization comes into play. Again, taking the easy path to encourage them to take that action. And do they have quick access to those contact forms and phone numbers? And just with the case study there, I will say what you're seeing there is the fact we're running a paid campaign with no landing page. However, when we did shift to a landing page with all these key features here, conversion rate instantly shot up there, and it continued to grow from there.
Yeah, that's a really important point. When you're thinking about a paid ad campaign, one of the biggest mistakes I see companies make is just taking people to your homepage. So you're leaving that decision up to them and hoping that they find a conversion path. And in most cases, they won't. So to Steph's point in this chart, this is somebody that was running a campaign that was just directing to a general page. Once you think about and create a custom landing page and you have one purpose on that page, your conversions go through the roof as long as that page is set up in the right manner. Now, Steph, thinking about setting up a good key landing page, what are some of the elements there? I'm assuming you want your call to action pretty high, right?
Oh yeah, call to actions, high, and having the contact us form or the phone number above the fold where you don't have to have the person scroll down to find it. Having quick access to that message, that solution, and that access point to take that action. Those are what we would encourage. You can build it out to, make it more social proof where you're adding in testimonials and videos within that page itself. But, that's where you would need to understand your audience a bit more, what your message is, what your overall strategy is. So you want to complement that ad destination with what you're doing overall for your marketing goals.
And the other thing is give somebody a reason to want to fill out a form or to want to pick up the phone. It's not about you. It's not about how amazing your services are. It's how your services can be used to solve a hard problem that end user is experiencing. If you can show them what benefit they're going to get out, what value they're going to get out of filling out that form, of clicking to call, they're more likely to convert. Awesome insight, Steph. Thank you. Let's go on now to talk a little bit about user experience. I know user experience is a big factor in budgeting and success rates. So talk to us about what user experience is and how do you provide it?
So really, this is wrapping up everything we're talking about with your website or landing page. And user experience is essentially that any touch point the user has with your brand. So Aaron is going to touch on the fact that it's not just the website, it's about your ads as well for the user experience, but to conclude what's happening with user experience and making sure that you're giving people a quick, easy access, relevant experience for them, it's going to actually result in better performance for your campaign. So really, to highlight the fact that, we moved people to a landing page for that previous case study I showed, the most successful clients, we have quick applications. And that was a key factor with that particular client, where previously it was, we sent them to a page that had more options. It didn't have an easy access to the application form. However, that landing page we shifted to had a quick insight where it was just name, email, and phone number that we requested. And that resulted in less friction for that user to actually complete the application. And so that's part of the user experience and how they're engaging with your website after they click on the ad. And so kind of to take things back, what's happening initially with that ad experience. And I'm going to let Erin kind of dive into that a little bit more.
Yeah, so last month, Prudence talked about user experience for SEO and how important that was. And user experience is equally as important when it comes to your ad and your keywords when you're advertising in Google and Bing, because it can impact the price that you pay. So the search engines assign something called an ad relevancy and a quality score. These scores based on your ads and your keywords, and they do impact the ability for the ad to show. So what determines these scores? It's how the user searches, what your ad says, and what your website says is also a critical key point. So Google looks at all that and says, is this relevant? So a higher quality score actually could mean a lower cost per click and a better ad placement over your competitor. Now, your quality score, without getting too far into the weeds, is determined by your ad quality, your keyword relevance, your landing page experience, and the expected click-through rate or ad engagement rate. So it's not just your website and the user experience there, but Google and Bing look at the user experience when they're searching and how your keywords and your ads play into that.
So Erin, one key thing I want to reinforce is that if you don't have a good user experience, if you don't have the proper ad copy, if the click-through rates aren't good, if the landing page has a high bounce rate, quick abandonment, you're paying more money, aren't you?
You are. If you want to bid on jobs for welders, but nowhere on your website do you even mention that you employ welders, that could impact your quality score just a little bit. You need to make it relevant. You need to make sure that if you're bidding on welding jobs, your website somewhere mentions that you offer that.
Yes. So as Erin and Stephanie are working with our clients on optimizing their campaigns, these are key things that we're looking at. We're looking at ad variations. We're looking at ad copy. We're looking at the landing page. We're looking at the keywords that we're buying and also the negative keywords that we're preventing that maybe have a low conversion rate. And they're constantly going through this and using tools and technology and insight that they've gained in working with hundreds of different staffing companies to make sure that we are optimizing the spend to its fullest. And what's great about this is that often it makes the cost of having someone like Stephanie and Erin, who are very knowledgeable, managing this, it kind of eliminates that cost because we're able to make sure that that spend is extremely efficient. We're driving down that per click cost as much as we can and getting the most out of our budgets. So if you are looking at running a campaign, it's important to really look at all these factors. And Erin, one follow-up question for you. I know that sometimes when you're designing ads and copy, you're doing things extremely purposefully because you know from working with other clients that a certain verbiage or a certain keyword or certain information on a landing page is going to negatively impact their quality score, right?
Right. And we'll get into this a little bit later, but if I see certain terms are being searched for very often and it's leading to a click, when it comes time to A/B test, I am going to take that keyword and put it in the ad copy somewhere, and it instantly gives your score a little bit of a boost. Google loves it.
Awesome. All right. And that might be a good transition here. So talk to us a little bit about post click-through data. And I hesitate to say Google Analytics 4 because it's a big internal headache or challenge, but talk to us a little bit about this.
I want to say, do I have to? But yes, I have to. So if you're not aware, Universal is being sunsetted on July 1st. RIP Universal. My biggest piece of advice is if you have not been in GA4, you really should start familiarizing yourself now. I consider myself moderately tech savvy. Maybe that's a little bit more credit, but I have some challenges still in G4 and I'm in it fairly often. There's a lot of differences between Universal and G4. I only touched on a few of them here. There's a lot of training resources, webinars and resources out there, so go find them, there's plenty. But the big difference is you can measure across platforms and devices using multiple forms of identity, which is great. Universal had hit limits, so sessions only counted if certain criteria had been met. GA4 is now event-based. GA4 also includes things like automatic events like first visit, engagement, session start, and then they have enhanced events, which include page views, scroll, outbound clicks, site search, and more. So it kind of gives you more data in a way. It's kind of simple, but it also could be a little bit more confusing because we're so used to universal analytics that it's kind of like, what is all this foreign stuff? G4 has, they say that they have resolved duplicate reporting by using user ID, device ID, multiple devices to give you a better look at the user journey. So it's kind of not counting the same user twice. So the data might not always, it might look different if you're comparing Universal to G4. And conversions in G4. So this is where like I'm personally learning this a little bit more now. So previously to measure an event as a conversion, if you used Google Tag Manager, you had to enter in a category, an action, and a label. So GTM is still important for some custom events, but since GA4 has some automatic events, it allows you to set up some custom event parameters that may save you those GTM steps with Tag Manager. Personally, that conversion setup, it took a little bit of getting used to, but now that I've been kind of chipping away at it, it seems like it is a little bit easier. And my final tip is to compare data, you need data. Don't wait until June 15th to put this on your site. Do it today, do it yesterday, do it 2 weeks ago, because when July 1st rolls around, you can access your Universal, but you're not going to have that nice side-by-side comparison. The data is just not going to really compare nice. Put it in place now, get a couple months of data in there to look at. And then finally, which is probably even more important, is it defaults your data retention to just 2 months. You have to physically fix that to 14. And that's where it maxes out, is with 14 months. So that's another big change. So biggest tip, do it now and learn it.
Aaron, I got a bone to pick with you. You started off by saying that your tech skills maybe were lacking, and then you went into this tech speak and went into great detail.
I tried not to be great detail, but I don't know. When I get into GA4, I feel like a dummy. So I'm figuring it out as I go along.
No, you're doing fantastic. And Erin is greatly underselling her tech experience, but she's been going through this for and as a team here at Haley, we've been looking at this for a year. We are up to speed going through and educating ourselves as much as possible, doing A/B testing, setting up different attribution models, looking at how we can better use Google Analytics to tell the right story, to gather the right information, and make more educated marketing and budget decisions. And that's what's great about it, is that it's going to give us some amazing insight. For those of you that have products with us, that have your website with us, that are using us for paid or social, these are all things that we're doing behind the scenes. They're all things that we're looking at and preparing. So if you have questions, comments, concerns, let us know. And if you are not currently working with us, we'd love to talk with you. And if you have someone that manages your website now, manages paid, manages social, these are some questions that you'll want to ask that provider, that vendor, to make sure that you're ready for universal analytics sunsetting. So great information. Now let's talk about, we talked about how this data collection is changing a little bit, but let's talk about how we use data to optimize our paid strategy, and more specifically, what you're doing in the paid campaigns that you're managing, Steph and Aaron, to make sure that we're driving the best results.
Yeah, so as you mentioned, we make data data-driven decisions here, and our team loves data. We love the fact that we can dive into larger samples of data and make educated decisions for your paid campaigns and other marketing efforts. So really the steps you're going to see here are essentially, you know, three or four key steps here, where when you first launch your ads, you want to supervise but not overanalyze. You want to make sure that your ads are running, collecting initial data, but you need to have some patience to allow that strong initial strategy to run and collect data. Then within the first 30 to 90 days, you know, you're going to collect more data, analyze it, and then start planning those optimization tactics. Once you find what you want to optimize, whether it's, you know, removing underperforming elements or enhancing real well-performing elements, you're going to launch those tests and basically start the whole process over. So it is an ongoing process, as with any marketing campaign, but it's not just a set it and forget it thing. For any of our clients, it's a matter of this process where you look at all the data, assess your goals, and take all these different data points into consideration. And, you know, as Aaron mentioned with GA4, it's those post-click metrics, but we're also looking at those pre and at click metrics like click-through rate, impressions, clicks, like what's happening before and at the click that's working for you guys. You know, we had this great case study here, and Aaron, I don't know if you want to speak a little bit about your approach, your specific approach, but this works. And we can see with the case study here, this has been functioning over. This client has been with us for a few years, and you can see over the last year, it's seen gradual increases and improvements over key metrics like click-through rate and conversion volume.
Yeah, Steph, there are different ways that we each optimize a campaign, and it's not like there's this checklist and we go down this checklist and it's the same optimization for every client, for every campaign, for every industry. So if it's in the first 30 days of your campaign, it's not that it's set it and forget it. Set it live, and I keep an eye on things. So if it's a search campaign, the first thing I'm looking at is search terms report. And that tells me how users are searching and what triggers your ad and if they're clicking on the ad, right? So you can expect to see maybe some competitor searches are going to trigger the ad because of, you know, ad relevancy, and Google says the user might be interested in this as well. So one of the things I'll do in that first 30 days is negative keywords. Anything that wasn't put in that Google might surprise me with, that gets added to the list. I don't, you know, I'm sure Steph does the same thing. Steph, is there anything else you like to do in the first 30 days?
I like to make sure that the bid strategies are appropriate, because that will help you, you know, with your positioning and market share to make sure you're appearing at right times and everything. So it's minor tweaks like that where you're adjusting maybe when your ads are appearing, or, you know, essentially how high they're appearing, making sure that they're actually visible.
Very true. Very true.
I love that point. Even time of day can impact things greatly. You might find that your ads are getting the best response and the most conversions at specific hours throughout the day. It might be during lunch. It might be right after work. It might be on the weekends. But you need to look and examine this data to make meaningful decisions and optimize your budget. And these are the things that Aaron and Steph do constantly.
Right. There's a balance of what type of changes we make, like we're talking about, whether they're small or larger changes, and it's appropriate to know when to make those different changes. So again, like Aaron's saying, the first 30 days to 90 days, it's like, how big of changes do we do? But, those minor changes are always there to, improve those initial adjustments.
And the last thing that I just wanted to add there is when you're making changes, don't make too many changes at once. In order to do an effective A/B test, we need to change one element. So to the point, supervise, don't overanalyze, don't make too many changes at once because you're not going to get the real story there. And this is something that our team does consistently. Now I want to move on and talk a little bit about personas. You mentioned it earlier when you're looking at key target audiences. How do you go about building personas of the right clients, of the right candidate targets?
Yeah, so this is part of your initial strategy where you are looking to figure out who you want to see your ads. And within the list that we have here, we have job seekers, employers, current clients, past clients, and there's a whole range here of people. And the idea here is to segment out your core target audience, and really identify within those individual candidate and client prospects. Segment them by industry or, and we'll get into it further, by advertising channel that they likely live in. There's a ton of variety in who can see your ads. And by building the right persona, you can enhance your overall performance. And we're going to dive into 3 key results and, reasons why you want to be intentional about this targeted identification. And so, like I mentioned, it's going to give yourself a competitive edge with your campaign because you're going to better understand their current needs. As we talked about in the fact that, people move through AIDA or the buying process, you don't always know which stage they're in when they come upon your ad, but our recommendation is develop the strategy and ad messaging, the targeting strategy that speaks within specific stages. So for example, certain ads will be more about high volume awareness and getting people to introduce, to learn about your brand and your offerings. Some ads will be more focused on that action point where you're going to say, finish your application's waiting for you. They're going to be more related to that particular, message to act right now. So it's really the understanding to kickstart where you start planning your initial strategy. But as I'm talking about, you're going to craft that more relevant messaging with this understanding of those different personas. The first impression matters, we all know how important that is. And there's different components within the messaging that relate in terms of text or words, images, videos. So again, you want to be intentional about how you're developing that relevant message to make sure it resonates with each of those different personas. And then,
I was just going to say, Steph, those personas too are extremely important, not just an ad copy, but like you mentioned earlier, the landing page. You might want to have individual landing pages for each persona that you create, right?
You're speaking my language. Yes, I would highly encourage it. And that's where, we can help in terms of really understanding, how far to build out your campaign. Like sometimes, there might be some overlap, but yes, you're going to want to definitely distinguish your landing page with a certain audience. Remember that one page, one purpose, where you're speaking to one core audience about one core, action point there essentially. And then finally, and kind of diving into this next slide here, it's, those personas give you a head start on identifying the right channel. And in all of this, you're going to think like, you don't want to think like yourself. You want to think like your target audience. Again, we're all unique individuals with their own interests and needs, and we all move through AIDA differently. So it's a matter of figuring out those key elements before you figure out how to choose where to start.
Yeah, Steph, you'd be surprised that the keywords you think you should use are really not the keywords that people are searching for. So let's say you as a staffing owner may want to fill some finance roles. What keywords should you use? You may think that bidding on a very specific job title is the way to go. And sometimes that will work. Let's say it's senior finance analyst hiring. That's very, very specific. And you might not bring in a lot of traffic, but you have to think and bid how people actually search. And we may see more engagement and more placements come out of that traffic by thinking like the user. I would start with terms like finance jobs, jobs in finance, finance analyst jobs, even Indeed finance jobs, which we do see that come up in the search terms report, and we can bid on it. We just can't put the word Indeed in the ad because it's misleading. So then what you would do is you'd want to make sure you've got a solid negative keyword strategy, and you do this to block or omit things that you don't want to trigger your ad for. And this could be things like entry-level finance jobs or no experience welder jobs, anything like that. So you could start with not saying that it's a broad keyword, but then you refine it with your negative keyword strategy. Ultimately, we use something called the Google Keyword Planner because it tells us how people search and it gives you a good starting base, and Google suggests other terms that are related. And they also tell us what that expected search volume and click volume is. So if someone comes to us and they say, I want this super niche keyword, we can go into Google and be like, all right, is anyone searching for this? And Google will tell us if they are. And if they aren't, Google tells us how people are searching that's related to that term. And then we also look at your existing search terms report, and we can see how the ad was triggered. And sometimes it gives us a little bit more insight and even some kind of like keyword discovery, where we'll add that into our keyword strategy and start bidding on some new variations, because the keywords you start with on day one, that evolves over time. And by day 60 and day 90, your keyword list might look a little bit different as you pause the keywords that aren't performing or receiving volume, and you discover new keywords that are starting to drive some volume and some actions. Other PPC tactics include targeting layers. So on social media, you can layer in actively looking for a job, and LinkedIn allows you to add in current job titles. But ultimately, just test out ad variations and call to actions. That could be a better job with a better company, and that might work better than just saying immediate openings. And then just a final note on ad schedules. I know Brad and Steph mentioned it earlier. Sometimes receiving traffic at 3 o'clock in the morning isn't the best traffic. Although I was surprised very recently when I took a look at a 3-month time span for a client of mine, and I said, you're getting a little bit of traffic early in the morning, but it's also converting. So we're going to keep it, right? So, those 3 a.m. clicks don't always work, but sometimes they do.
Yeah, for some very specific roles, that might be when you get in front of people that are open to, new opportunities. Can you imagine somebody in the tech space that's, working on a project till 3 a.m, and then they finally realize, you know what, I'm tired of this. I need a new job.
Exactly.
Maybe they are searching for that, right? So intel and insight into that data is important. And then I love the title of the slide, Don't Think Like Yourself. And one of my favorite examples is years ago, I had a client that said, you know what, I'm sick of being called a temp agency because temp has a negative connotation to it. I am a human capital procurement specialist. And that's what they wanted to go with. And that's fine. However, that's not how people are searching for your services. So make sure that you're using your words, not theirs. And as Steph and Aaron reiterated, that data is available. We'll be able to know, we'll be able to see that, and again, make educated decisions on our ad variations. All right, let's talk about choosing the right ad channel, because there's really no shortage of channels right now.
Yeah, and this is actually the last part of developing your initial strategy there. So where are you going to actually show your ad? Once you identified your personas of your target audience, are you going to go in Google, Facebook, Bing, LinkedIn, Instagram? We have a lot of options here, and they each play their own part and have their own value. But as you're going to see, there's going to be different costs as well. Depending on the persona, maybe advertising in Google for your healthcare jobs might be a bit more expensive. It's versus, if you want to advertise your light industrial jobs in Google, there's going to be a cost associated to each of them. And it's going to be very important to get this right as you're initially planning your initial strategy.
And it's important not to make assumptions based on your behavior either. I hear a lot of clients that say, oh, I'm never on Facebook anymore, so it doesn't work. Well, you might not be, but the person that you're looking to recruit or the person that you're looking to do business with might be. And there's data to support that. So make strategic decisions based on data, not necessarily just your personal behavior.
For sure. So choosing the right channel does matter. So first, you need to look at your goals. If your goal is branding and awareness or reach, you might want to first consider Google, maybe Facebook, or even YouTube. Video ads are fantastic for branding. If you want to increase the volume of qualified users and you need web traffic, I would say Google, Bing, maybe even Facebook. If your neighbor down the street is killing it on social media and you need to compete with him, I'd say, yeah, let's go with Facebook off the bat. If you want leads, let's look at Google, Bing, maybe even LinkedIn or Facebook has on-site lead generation. If you're not doing PPC, your competition probably is. They could have a massive social footprint. They could be running local map ads and be drawing in that foot traffic that is bringing those candidates in for walk-in interviews. Your warehouse employees are probably not on LinkedIn, but they most likely are mindlessly scrolling Facebook and hitting up that search engine to see just who is hiring. So if your specialty is super niche, the right keyword may not bring in the right enough volume, and your budget matters. So you can't expect maybe a $300 budget to bring in a decent audience in Pittsburgh. But if you're on a tight budget, you can make it work, but you have to be reasonable in your strategy and cast a smaller net. And finally, this nice little picture, yep, where it says display URL domain. So this is a screen capture from what's called the Auction Insights in Google. And it's a tool that gives us an idea on how your ads are performing against your competitor. So you can see here where it says you and then impression share. That means your ads, you're showing, about 16% of the time, and you're showing more often than Indeed. And then the top of page rate, how often is your ad showing above Indeed? So these are all important things to see, to know, are you hitting the right audience, who your competition is, and that also helps us make other decisions.
Yeah, and what I love about this, a common question that we get all the time is, am I spending too much? Am I spending enough? Is there opportunity? And as Erin just mentioned, she can show impression share, how often you're at the top of the page rate. She could show lost opportunity. And at some point, there is diminishing returns on advertising spend, but we use the data to make the right decisions on budget, placement, everything else. And it really becomes a strategic investment decision as opposed to just, yeah, you need to spend more.
Okay, so sometimes your goals change. And when your goals change, sometimes we also need to change your paid strategy. So in the first chart at the top, this was a client of mine. They came to us and said they wanted to be in Google. We have to be in Google. We want more exposure. Their industry had some pretty competitive CPCs, or cost per click. So we really couldn't gain many website visitors. So showing in Google was great, but how often your ad shows and how many clicks you get is controlled by that cost. So we reevaluated our goals, and they said, no, we really want to increase the visits to our website. So we changed to a Facebook strategy where the cost per clicks were much lower, and the website started to see a nice jump in consistent volume. And then the bottom graph for client example number 2. So again, this is a client of mine that started off on Google, but they had a branding display campaign because it was a new office and they just wanted to get their name out there. So we reevaluated their goals and we switched to a Google search campaign so that we could drive more qualified users to the website. Now, while this wasn't a conversion focused campaign, you can see those conversions with the lighter blue line really also started to pick up, and that was a nice bonus. So we're actively reaching those candidates who are going to look for jobs in Google. So as your needs change, so should your strategy. It's not always a network change, but that can be the right answer.
And Erin, I had this question for you, but just so the audience knows, the drop off here, it looks like a drop off, but it really isn't, just because of when we pulled this data, we only had a couple days in March so far. But what's great about this is you saw this light blue line, these conversions is on pace to have a record number of conversions in March. It's awesome. Yeah,
March is already shaping up to kick February's butt.
Love it. All right. Let's wrap up and talk about some final takeaways before we get into the question portion.
So there are some strategy mistakes that can cost you money. So number one, if you think PPC is the only tactic that will drive success, what does that look like? That looks like you think 3% of your PPC traffic is going to send all of your conversions and all of your you're going to fill all of your jobs just out of 3% of your total website traffic. That's not necessarily the case. It all works together. If you don't test out different networks, different call to actions, ads, if you build it once and leave it, that also can cost you money. Pulling the plug too fast. You launch it, 2 weeks went by, I see nothing, it's not going to work. That, that's also, you need to give it some time. Let the machines do what the machines are supposed to do. And then making too many changes too early in the campaign's infancy. If you push too many buttons and pull too many levers, you're not going to know what helped and what hurt. So generally, when it comes to making changes, if you make a big strategy change in Google with like a bidding strategy, Google even says we need 10 to 14 days before you start seeing significant changes. So I say 30 days, then make a change, but don't make too many changes. And then also don't cast too large of a net. And what I mean by that is your geo-targeting. If you want to target the entire state of New York, that's a very large net. You're going to need a substantial amount of budget to make sure you can cover that area, or your market share or how often your ads can show. It's not going to be very effective. It's like using a small AC window unit to try to cool off your entire home. You're going to get some cold air, but it's not going to be very effective. Steph, do you have any other tips?
I will just say, like, everything that you see here and everything we've talked about, it really all ties together. And I know we mentioned it within the presentation here, but doing something, whether it's a strategy change or data assessment, like, it all comes at key points because of, you know, the strategy you have in place, or the data that is collected, or the goals that you currently have. So, you know, we mentioned one of these fixes might not, one of these fixes is not going to be the solution for every single campaign or client. You know, you might need to test a new network for one client, but it's not going to work for another. You know, it really is a matter of being patient and being intentional about how you run your paid campaign.
Love it. Thank you both so much. We're going to open it up for questions. As questions are coming in, we'll ask those to Steph and Aaron. I'll chime in if it makes sense, but I'll give you a minute. Use the question and answer panel. We already had several come in throughout the webinar. Great questions. I think they're going to add a ton of value for people. I did want to mention that we obviously offer pay-per-click online advertising services. We focus exclusively in the staffing industry. We've done a ton of A and B testing, C and D and E and F testing too. And we've really refined and understand what works, what keyword strategies work, how you attract a niche audience, what platforms are best for the goals that you're looking to accomplish. We've tested all of this and have some proven strategies and products. We have some out-of-the-box products to solve very specific challenges and use cases. And then we also offer custom PPC services where we really dig in to find your profile audience, walk through what good conversions look like, can create custom landing pages. So if you have questions, reach out to our team. We're happy to sit down and consult with you and answer anything that you have and come up with a strategy that's really going to fit the goal that you're looking to achieve. All right, let's open it up to questions. We'll answer as many as we can here. A bunch came in. If we don't get to your question live, we will follow up and cover that afterwards. If you want to sit down and talk with one of our team members, reach out to us at 888-696-2900. Submit a form at info@haleymarketing.com. Visit our website for more information, and our team will get right back to you with suggestions. All right. Our first question that came in was, Aaron, I'm going to direct this to you. At one point in the presentation, you had mentioned targeting options, and one of the options was to target people in your ATS. How do you do that?
Good question. You have a list in your ATS, and both Google and Facebook has a certain required match rate. So we have to match at least 1,000 users. Ideally, more is better. And we can upload that list and basically say, Google or Facebook, please help find these people, right? And then they show them the ad. So it's almost like a remarketing type of tactic. Yeah.
Love that. Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, me too. I mentioned earlier that you think about how much a staffing or recruiting company spends on recruitment marketing on the job boards. And if that applicant doesn't apply the first time, or even if they apply and you don't place them right away, you wasted so much money, especially if you're not doing anything with that database. So it's a great way to stay in front of that database, great way to make sure that you're top of mind, great way to drive more referrals and fill more open positions. I almost, like, for me, I think every single staffing company should be doing a retargeting or campaign, or retargeting people in their ATS or their CRM. To me, it just makes so much sense. You're spending all this time and effort recruiting. You're spending all this time and effort prospecting and doing cold calls and outreach. Why the heck aren't you using these campaigns? Because it's going to take you 20 impressions to actually get somebody on the phone to take action.
100%. And with cookies, we don't know when they're going away, but they will go away eventually. Having those lists it could be critical.
For sure. All right, I'll open this question up to both of you for B2B clients. So staffing companies that are out there looking to get in front of decision makers. Have you seen any positive results from Facebook? You shared that example earlier of, CPAs, and the cost for going after CPA business is a lot lower on Facebook than it is on Google or LinkedIn. Is it an effective strategy for B2B sales development?
I'll start off. I would prefer Google over Facebook for B2B. I personally have not run any B2B campaigns in Facebook, so I can't speak about comparing it to what my Google campaigns are doing. I don't know if Steph has any.
Yeah, I mean, same. I would encourage Google despite the higher cost, just because of the type of audience you're going to engage with. However, that said, if you have those remarketed lists, social channels with a lower CPA could be a better option because you're able to focus in on keep those right target audience members. I think what we need to remember here is the fact that different channels and advertising networks have different user intent, essentially. And so you need to consider that as people are, as you're advertising. People go to Google to actively start their research or to engage with a company versus Facebook. It's a little more passive. So you're going to be rewarded with a lower cost per click, but what's the intent of that user coming through? And that's where the key target audience comes into play.
Yeah, and my take on this is test. I have seen it work effectively in the B2B space in some industries, some areas, some levels of decision maker. So it really depends on that profile and whether or not those people are active on Facebook or not. They may or may not be. So I think you need to look at the data to make a decision on where that money makes the most sense. And then look at it pre and look at it post and test it out. The great thing about paid and digital marketing is that you get access to all the data. So we'll know pretty quickly whether or not it's working. All right, another question just came in. How strict is Google when it comes to gathering a large audience? And the second part of this question really, I think, is important. Facebook does not work for us because they will not allow us to drill down enough, and they force us to reach an older audience, and those people are often retired. I would like to start off by just addressing that last part. That may be the case, but don't make that assumption. While Facebook is starting to skew demographically a little bit older, there's still a high volume of younger users there. The other thing to keep in mind here is that Instagram ads are controlled through Facebook. There's the connection there. So while Facebook might not be a great audience, you can still run ads on Instagram, which might skew to a younger audience. So again, don't make assumptions that one platform is old, one platform's young. There is opportunity across almost every platform to reach who you're trying to target. Erin, Steph, anything to add there?
Yeah, Facebook and Google both do have some restrictions because this is an employment vertical. So Google doesn't necessarily limit us on gathering a large audience as long as there's some search volume in who you're trying to go after. We could probably almost definitely reach them in Google. But if you want to hire users who have specific degrees in a specific location and have a certain education level, LinkedIn might be a consideration. LinkedIn is also a little bit more expensive, but that might be the place to consider.
Yeah, and then you just obviously have to be careful with age discrimination or anything else. Yeah. Awesome. All right. let's see, a few other questions came in throughout the presentation, and one was pretty general. We were talking about placements, and the question was, what's your favorite platform or what's your favorite network?
You
like
want
we're
to go,
have-
Steph?
I feel like we're gonna have the same answer, Erin. I mean, the Google search is what I started off on, and I do really like it. Just because it's, you know, the type of keyword targeting strategies in play and thinking through that strategy. But I will say I would love to run ads that have video in them because of the type of engagement. Same answer.
Similar.
There you go. Just because of how much fun you can actually have with those type of messages and everything, but it's more engaging to the target audience. So again, part of that user experience element there is really key, and that's where I would love to advertise in.
Yeah, I too love search, but here's a shocker, Steph and Brad. I love Bing. I think Bing is the most underutilized tool that you could possibly have in your back pocket. There's not as much competition. The reach isn't as far, but your cost per click, if it's B2B, your cost per click is going to be so much lower. I can almost guarantee it. And I also too would love to do some more video. Video is just so much fun.
All right, we're up on time, but I have one final question that I have to ask you both. I'm going to chime in too. I want your favorite use case for PPC. We have a lot of attendees that are in obviously staffing and recruiting businesses. They're looking for more orders. They're looking for more candidates. Give me your favorite use case.
I guess I'll go for Google search and a landing page combo. I've been running some ads for light industrial candidates where it's a quick, easy landing page where people search for temp jobs or light industrial work, or very, for jobs that they're looking for, they have easy access to that form. And, we see a high rate of return for those applications because of the type of user engagement we have there. So, it could, well, again, the cost per click might be higher because it's Google search. You're going to get a good return on it with that case.
Awesome. Erin, what's yours?
Oh, I hate to sound like I'm mimicking Steph, but I have a client who is in the medical space in locums, and we were seeing, good amount of applications and signups and activity, and PPC was actually doing better than organic and direct. But when we went to some custom landing pages that the client made, now we're seeing even more come out, and it's just shocking. I'm shocked. I'm speechless month after month that we're killing it.
That's great. So I'm going to cheat. I'm going to give two. I mentioned one earlier already. I think every staffing company should be doing remarketing or retargeting ads. So when somebody hits your website, remarket to them. Make sure that you're showing up everywhere they are online throughout that buying decision. Same with candidates. And I love using ATS and CRM lists. My other, though, is one new one that we've just started offering. It's Google local map ads. So if you have an office that isn't located in your city center, so maybe you're a few miles outside of city center, but you do a ton of business in a specific city, or people are searching for a staffing agency in a city, I love those ads. I love it if you have a high number of good Google reviews, because those reviews show up too. And I think it's such a great campaign that every local staffing agency that focuses in a specific market should be running. All right. Well, Erin and Stephanie, I want to thank you both. A wealth of information. I hope everyone listening found value. If you'd like to talk to Steph, Erin, or one of our other specialists, please reach out. And then I want to also invite everyone to some upcoming webinars. On Tuesday, March 28th, one of my favorite webinars we do every year is the recap and review of the SIA, Staffing Industry Analysts Executive Forum. Amazing speakers they bring in, great panelists, great insight from other leaders in fast growing staffing companies. So we're going to share everything that we learned there. We had 4 team members, myself included, that attended that. And we're going to share the key takeaways that we found so that you can start incorporating those in your business. And then on Thursday, April 6th, We're going to have 3 ways to make your sales prospecting efforts easier and more effective. This is going to become imperative as we go throughout 2023 and into 2024. It's going to become harder to sell our services. We've been blessed over the last few years that orders have come in. We're going to have to start hunting for those. And the earlier that you put your plan in place and start doing that, the more impactful it's going to be. You can reserve your seat at lunchwithhaley.com for each of those. Thank you all so much for joining us. Steph, Aaron, thank you so much.